Just going to wing it here. That's what I said when I was typing it. Hey folks, it's Revel, your host on the You're Listening to Radio Revel podcast. But you already know that. That is the name of the so-called broadcaster. You also already know, if you've been listening, that this season is generally called Trailing Edge of a Generation. That being because I am a member of the last of the baby boomer generation, talking about things that baby boomers tend to talk about. Or maybe bitch about? Well, maybe both. Like the other day, my brother Bob tells me about a car accident he had. Driving down a wet, dark highway during morning rush hour, plenty of traffic, the cars before him brake somewhat suddenly. He also brakes somewhat suddenly, but in time. But the guy behind him doesn't brake at all and rams into the rear end of my brother's fairly new car. I think he's had it for about a year. So the guy behind has pretty much totaled his car. My brother's car has damage to the rear end, but doesn't look all that bad. A bit of broken plastic on the front bumper as well. He'd skidded into that car ahead of him when hit from behind, but that other car didn't suffer any damage that could be readily seen. As my brother is fiddling about in the moments after the accident, looking for the button that turns on the emergency lights, all the electricity in his car blacks out. He's sitting there in the early morning darkness. Nothing electrical in his car is working. Then a tiny voice chirps out at him saying,
"Are you all right? It seems you've had an accident. I've contacted authorities and help is on the way."
Seems his car has one of those newfangled accident alert systems that takes care of everything for him. I think maybe including sending a message to his insurance company and his family that he's been in an accident. Or maybe that message was sent by that app his entire family has on their phone. By opening that app, anyone in the family group can see a Google Map image with little arrow bubbles with the faces of each family member, pointing at where that family member is or where that family member is headed. That's creepy. I asked Bob just who was in his group. Well, he is, his wife, his daughter, his son, and his son's wife. I asked Bob if that wasn't just a little creepy, being able to know where anyone is at any moment of the day. He admitted that the family did do something they call stalking. Or maybe that's just what it's called in general. I didn't catch that. Where they casually open the app at any moment of the day or night and look at where everyone else is or where they are headed in real time. I commented that he wouldn't be able to have an affair with that blonde gal at the office then, and he pointed out that the only gal at the office wasn't blonde, and that she wasn't a candidate for an affair, and he wasn't interested anyway. He did share that he'd once planned to go pick up his grandkids with his wife, and that while they were driving out to his son's home, that son called his mother asking why Dad wasn't coming over with her. Dad was, but his telephone wasn't. That was sitting on a footstool in his living room. That's where I intervened with an, "Oh dear, I'm feeling old right now." Yeah, had to add a disclaimer. I wasn't feeling old like in being an old man. Rather, I was feeling old because I wanted to use the term newfangled again. I began to think about my "where are my keys" father-in-law. Last time I was visiting the in-laws, the kids were installing an app on his phone, like the one my brother has, maybe even the same one, that would allow them to track where my father-in-law is at all times. Not a bad idea. The guy goes out daily to walk the dog or drive to his vegetable garden, and he can get confused and nervous and can end up lost. Thing is, when push comes to shove, I think his kids are going to find his telephone right there on the footstool next to his keys before they find him. And now the kids are installing a couple of security cameras inside the in-laws' house to keep an eye on them. My father and mother-in-law are elderly. He misplaces his keys. She is almost couch-ridden. There are a number of issues to be controlled, so who is to say that a couple of cameras isn't the right idea, at least during this short transitional period before more serious measures are taken, like a live-in helper or a day center or even a nursing home? Those are possibilities, but the cameras are useful again during the transition. That's kind of a weird thing for me to think about. I remember way back in the 80s when I was giving private ESL lessons in New York City, I had this student from Israel, a young guy in his 20s, Orthodox Jew, worked in the Diamond District, 47th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues. He was the guy who first made me aware of the security cameras everywhere in New York City. He told me that you could be recorded anywhere on that block of 47th Street, but then he took me on a walk elsewhere in our neighborhood, and every few seconds he would point out another camera bolted to a windowsill or the corner of a building, observing us as we strolled down the sidewalk. I had been blissfully unaware. I've got a single camera in my living room. It was a gift from my brother-in-law who had updated his camera. My mate likes having this camera. We turn on the movement-sensitive security features when we are away from home for any long period of time. We can observe our living room on our telephone. We can shout out, "I've called the police," if we see that someone is in the house. The movement sensor sends a notification every time a shadow passes in front of the front window and when the sun rises and sets. I tend not to think about the camera up there in the bookshelves, though I can tell from the publicity feeds on my tablet and phone that that camera is one of the many electronic apparatus that are probably listening to me. Again, it's weird, but I just don't pay any attention to it. When visiting in-laws, I used to stay at my sister-in-law's flat, just around the corner from my parents-in-law's home. My sister-in-law always welcomed us warmly with a comfortable bed, really fast internet, and a place to disconnect from the noise and drama at the grandfolks' home during holidays. My sister-in-law's husband is kind of a technology nerd who has installed all kinds of gadgets about, including a doorbell with facial recognition, an alarm on that door, a security camera in the living room, etc. Used to be that when I'd enter her flat, I'd only have to unplug the living room camera to protect my intimacy. So, a couple of Christmases ago, everyone is at the grandfolks' house for the big Christmas Eve dinner. I spill some soup on my sweater and excuse myself to go around the corner to my sister-in-law's flat, where I am staying that year, to change my sweater, rinse the soup out of the sleeve of the one I'd spilled upon, and hang it out to dry on the balcony. I also took advantage of this moment alone to smoke a cigarette on that same balcony. Trouble was, I had officially quit smoking, and this was a snuck cig. Trouble was, as I lit up that cig, I saw that my sister-in-law's husband had installed one of those security cameras outside to control the balcony. And with movement sensors all over the flat, I knew that both he and my sister-in-law would receive an alert that I was out on their balcony. So over at Grandma's house, the husband gets the alert and checks it, even though he knows that it is me. He is there at Grandma's house and saw me spill the soup and announce my plans to go to his flat to change, but he pulls out his phone, switches on the app, and shows everyone that I am on the balcony hanging out my sweater. Then shows everyone how I am lighting up a cigarette that I shouldn't be, since I had quit that summer before. That includes my mate, who was naturally not pleased as punch to see those images. Needless to say, I felt violated. I was, of course, embarrassed to have been caught cheating on the smoking thing, but I was very bothered first by having been watched on those cameras, and then even more bothered by my sister-in-law's husband sharing the images with everyone at that dinner party. I've not stayed at their flat since that incident. It just doesn't seem right to me. I haven't agreed to such surveillance. I mean, if a business puts up security cameras, the law here in Spain obliges them to post a sign that says that they exist and who owns them. I think that even private individuals have to put one of those red posters up with their name on it if they have exterior cameras pointed onto public areas like the sidewalk or parking in front of their property. even though I'm pretty sure such is not true for cameras that one installs inside their home. I'd have liked to have known about that stupid balcony camera at my sister-in-law's house. For around 32 euros then, and whatever the monthly telephone charge is, my brother and sisters-in-law, as well as my mate, are going to be able to keep an eye on their parents 24/7. I'm not sure what my parents-in-law think about this, but they'd no difficulty in becoming doom scrollers themselves, attention won over by news apps and WhatsApps and anything they can dopamine themselves with on their cell phone, so I doubt they were particularly a hard sell. On the other hand, I will be staying at their home this upcoming Christmas, so I'll be live on at least 5 cell phones whenever the owners of those phones want. I'll have to start wearing a ball cap, maybe a ski mask or a scarf covering the lower half of my face. I will be observed, even if only passively. I won't like it, but I will ignore it as I sit on the sofa over there in the corner, scrolling through those videos of ballet dancers and 80s music and endless sanding of endless recovered furniture. They always treat me like a king. They always feed me well. They don't expect anything more from me, and I'm not much for offering much more. I'm third on the age ladder here, and can easily take the yoke of my generation when things get too modern for comfort. This is it for this year. Next year, as is my wont, a probable change in direction. I'm leaning towards a regular uploading of a novel I wrote in 1990. As I polish the script, I see things that also make me recognize my status as old. Cassette tapes, landline phones with answering machines, ditto machines, Rolodexes, and educational morals that seem to have disappeared. I wrote the novel in just 2 or 3 months, taking advantage of a run of inspiration from the second novel. I'd thought of presenting the second novel here next year, but it's full of suicide. And that made me laugh. I do generally kill off my characters in my fiction, just a nice way to end my stories, or parts of them. And yes, some of my characters commit suicide, and that's just because it's one of the ways that people die. Others die with cars crushing their chests, or of old age, euthanasia, or of summer picnic potato salad food poisoning. But that second novel has at least a half a dozen suicides, and I'm not a big believer in sensibility disclaimers. So what made me laugh? Well, even the third novel has talk of suicide and a suicide, but, well, that's just one, not half a dozen. So, 2026 will bring an electronic book to the air, The Old Doctor, The Young Man, and The Schoolteacher. A chance to look back to a moment 35 years ago, I guess, a moment in which there are fewer cameras observing us, no cell phones listening to our conversations, no hidden microphones recording our thoughts, just us with our thoughts. Oh, well, there are hidden microphones, but the recorder is reel-to-reel and not at all connected to any web. As the music teacher, Mrs. Satchel, always said at the end of our grade school Christmas concert, "See you next year. Cheers."
You're listening to Radio Revel. Listen, like, subscribe, and share.